Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to show you how to replace a worn suspension part on your car. Do it with a Toyota Surf, something you don't see every day. It turns out, even though the steering wheel's on the wrong side for us, when you're driving, it's got way too much play. And when we jack it up in the air, we can see it's got play here. We crawl under, we can see the play's coming from this pitman arm. He couldn't get it off himself. He was having some problems. The first thing we do is you want to take this end off first. You get a pair of cutters and you pull out the little cotter pin. Sometimes you gotta whack it a little and then pull it out. Now this is a 19 millimeter here, so with a 19 millimeter wrench, stick it on. And we'll just take it off. And off it comes. Now we gotta get this off, but since we're throwing the arm away, we don't care if we wreck this. So we can use one of these forks to take it off, the one that fits. Because we're throwing it away anyways, we don't care if we rip the boot. So in this case, it just fits right in here. Slide it in, and you want it on the downside so you have a place to hit it. Then just whack the heck out of it with a hammer till it comes off. Yeah, we don't care if we rip the rubber because we're using it over. That's off there now. Now we got to take this one off. But before we do, we want to make sure this is going to line up the same way. It goes right here, pointed slightly to the right where this flap is here. Right here, it's even with it. So we'll put the spline on the right way when we put it back on. This one's bigger, it's 32 millimeters. So we'll get the 32 millimeter, get off. You'll often need an air wrench for that. Now, since it's absolutely important you have it lined the same way, I get a little paint and a brush. Then I dab a little paint here on the line and right here, so I know exactly where it's going to line up on the car. There. Now we know how it lines up. We got two marks. And then here's in the middle there, we'll paint a line here. So we'll know how it lines up when we put the new one on. Now you'll never give them up a hand, so you need a pitman arm puller like I have here. A good solid one to get it off. Most auto parts stores will loan you one free. Give them a deposit, give it back to them unbroken, away you go. You just open up the full way, it slides on, and then by hand, you tighten this. So you have that all over here, and that's tightened on. Then you tighten it and it pops it off. You can try with a long extension and a socket, but believe me, a lot of times that won't take it off. These guys tried, they couldn't, so I'm using my impact. But in this case, even the impact won't work. It's out with the acetylene oxygen torch. They tried a little blow torch, it didn't work. We'll get the big boy out. Then you get the torch and heat it all up. And in this case, now that it got hot, I could even hit it off with a hammer. And you can see, here's the old one, it's broken. Here's the new one, exactly the same. Then we just wiggle this on so that the lines line up. And get your big socket, put it on the end, and get it nice and tight. Now sometimes it's hard to get them on with both wheels, one on the ground, one off, so we're gonna jack this side up in the air too, so both wheels are up in the air. To jack it up that way, we'll have more weight that we can pull with the front end more. It'll all move smoothly. Then you have more play, so you can slide it in and get your hammer. So it goes in here. Then once you tap it enough, the thread sticks out and you can put the nut back on. Then we can tighten it with our 19 millimeter wrench. They get kind of stuck, so you got to use a wrench. The bare hands won't work on these, they're too big. They get it super tight and put the pin in. In goes the pin. You don't want it falling out, so you bend it. Now it won't fall out. Put it down. Then we'll take off the emergency brake that was on for safety so it didn't roll. Weird on the other side. Strange Japanese cars. All right, I got to use my left hand. There it goes. And start her up. And here we have it, a diesel now. Hilux Surf. That now goes down the road and it doesn't have excessive play. So the next time your vehicle suspension gets worn, why not fix it yourself? And here's some bonus questions and answers. Vehicle history. Scotty, I'm thinking about what my first car would be in the future. When I turn 16, what car should I have as my first car? Here's what I'd say. Who knows what the future's going to bring? It's going to be electric cars, hydrogen cars. No one really knows, right? So, buy a cheap gasoline car. Gasoline will probably still be around for quite some time. Look at Toyota Corollas, Honda Civics. If you want a reliable car that can last a long time, there's millions of them out there. You can find a decent deal, learn how to drive it, and if the future goes to electric or something, you can cash in then. Don't spend a bunch of money now on something that might be outdated. But But, really, get yourself a low-priced gasoline car. That's the best. Antonio Ramirez says, is an '02 Nissan Altima 2.5 manual a good first car? I'm not a fan of modern Nissans, but 2002 was a long time ago. Renault, the French company, bought them out in 2000, but they didn't start to get crappy till years later. That's a standard transmission. It could be a very good car. I got a customer who had one of those, got 180,000, still running okay. Have a mechanic check it out first. It's an old car. Lots of things can go wrong. Could have been wrecked, flooded, who knows. It could be a very good first car. Zach Wyman says, what's your thoughts on the new Kia Soul 2021? They're interesting looking cars if you like weird shaped cars, but they are Kias. And regardless of all the advertising hype and BS you will see in the world, they're not nearly as well made as Toyotas and Hondas, period. Now you could buy one. It could be an okay car for a while. It's not going to go 3, 4, 500,000 miles or more like a Honda or Toyota. It just won't. A while back, the Kias were a lot cheaper, so you paid a lot less, but you still got a decent car, right? But today, compare the prices, they've all jacked their prices up. There isn't all that much difference. And it's a 2021. I'd never buy a new car of any sort anyways, because it's a waste of money. Don't waste your money on a new one. If you want a new car, though, get a Toyota or Honda. They will last a really, really, really long time. The Kias, not so much. Ruskowski says, what are your thoughts on an '80 Corvette? All right, that was a long time ago. Now, in the '80s, the Corvettes weren't the greatest made cars, but people like them. They're kind of collector's items, right? You get a 40-year-old car, it's going to have problems. It doesn't matter if it's sat in a garage for 30 years. Everything's going to be dry rotten. The upholstery's going to be cracked. Don't overpay. Now, if you're into one that's been all done over, yeah, but just realize the '80s, they're not really collector's items. You know, they're fun little toys. You get one cheap, have some fun, drive it around. You want a go-kart when you're a kid, you can get a man's go-kart if you get an old Corvette. Just don't overpay. And realize, unless it's a convertible, it really doesn't have that much value. So if you get one cheap, have fun, but never overpay. And realize, it's a 40-year-old car. There's going to be things wrong. Don't think it's going to be an everyday driver, unless you go over it entirely and spend a fortune. Serbu says, I got a 1994 Mark III. The steering wheel shakes above 60. Why? Well, the most common thing is your tires aren't balanced right? And for like $70, you can get a tire balancing machine and check it yourself and balance them yourself. No big deal, right? Or if you want the easiest, cheapest attempt at a fix, put the front wheels in the back and the back wheels in the front. If it goes away, you know, it was the balance. And if you have unbalanced tires in the rear, it doesn't affect the steering. And if it drives fine, you can just leave it alone. Easy way to check it. Now, if it's not the tire balance, it can be a worn tie rod, an alignment being out. You can check all that stuff by watching my video, how to check your own car suspension, Scotty. You can watch that and learn how to check. But usually it's just the tires are out of balance. The wheel weights are glued on these days. Sometimes the glue falls off and then they're not balanced right anymore. That's the most common thing. Check that first. Elias H. said, why do brake pads break down? Friction. You step on the brakes. Your car's a whole bunch of kinetic energy moving down the road. To stop it, all that kinetic energy has to be turned into heat by the brake pads. The brake pads turn it into heat, stops the car, and then the heat dissipates with air cooling it down. That much heat, that much friction, they wear out a little bit at a time. Once they get to about the thinness of a dime, change them before it gets down to the metal and does damage. It's easy to do. I got many videos on how to change brake pads. It's not rocket science. Anybody with a little hand tools and a jack can do it themselves. But they break down just because of pure friction, and they just wear out. I knew a guy once says, I want my brake pads to wear out, so I'll lubricate them. Of course, then the brakes don't work because they're slipping from the lubrication. So don't do something crazy like that. Dylan Kellerman says, I got a 2014 Civic. How do I check the CVT transmission oil level? All right, look under there. If you see your transmission's dry, it's not leaking, it's probably completely full. But if you want to get the whole skinny on it, do a little research, and you'll see that if you look in there, take the level cap off on the side. Usually have to take the fender off on the driver's side, tire off the inner plastic stuff, and you'll see there's a little bolt on the top. You take it out, and when the fluid's at that level, it's full. They don't have dipsticks because they're swines. They've all gone that way. But like I say, if you've owned it for a while, the transmission's still dry, nothing's leaked out, it's probably completely full. King Raphael says, what do you think of a Mazda 3 2004 automatic? I'm thinking of getting one. Do a little research with the VIN number of that car, because back in '04, they used a bunch of different automatic transmissions in them. I know 3 of them that are perfectly fine, but I also know one of them that's an absolute pile of junk. And I had a customer who inadvertently paid $3,500 for a used one. She didn't have one of the good 3 ones, she had the one bad one, and it was a pile of junk. Do the research, and if it is the bad transmission, don't buy the vehicle. You don't want to get it with a bad transmission. Do a little research, you'll find out that some had good ones, some had bad ones. The VIN number will tell you. You call the dealer and say, which transmission do I have? And if it's one of the bad ones, do not buy it. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.